вечора, ми з України. доказу, що ця зброя існує, що вона може завдати будь-якого удару по українських силах. Наразі це черговий російський міф.
Ну і ми маємо інформацію також від Генеральної прокурорки України.
Information from the Prosecutor General of Ukraine.
Це 24 лютого Росія вбила на території України 115 дітей і поранила понад 148. Власне, ця цифра 148
Ukrainian children and more than 148 have been wounded. The majority come from Kyiv Oblast.
Русі, відповідно, це Київській області, на яких знаходяться російські військові, тому не треба щиняти паніку, що на Житомирщину вже зайшла техніка, зайшли війська Білорусі, це не відповідає дійсності. А щодо вивезених людей, хочу ще додати, я мав вчора на типу був вихідний.
Like to add that even though we had a day off yesterday, but I was just watching Russian TV just to find out what they were focusing on. I'm not an ageist, but the youngest person they were taking out, it was somebody 65 years plus 3 kids. They were showing children they were evacuating from Volnovakha. So the majority are the people that are elderly, and there's a deputy from Единая Россия, Pushilin, in the shot. This is very good for their propaganda TV because they are presenting this as some kind of salvation for the people. And even the shots from Mariupol, where Kadyrovцы were taking out people from the basements, they were carrying kids in their arms. It was such nice propaganda, which is later shown in TikTok, so favored by Kadyrov himself. They are embracing and kissing the kids, but at the same time we see how scared the women and grandmothers are. And later on we find out what is really happening to these people. And meanwhile, the number of IDPs is increasing, and the numbers will be increasing as well because of what is happening in Mariupol. And hopefully when we are able to evacuate these people, we understand that the numbers of IDPs will be increasing in our region, receives the majority of them, and we have the International Renaissance Fund that is helping with accommodating these people. So today we are having a guest representing the International Renaissance Foundation. We will be discussing the help that is being provided to IDPs. And while Oksana is entering our makeshift studio, I would like to tell you that the Security Service of Ukraine informs, should you have any information about saboteurs or terror activity in Lviv region or threats to military facilities, social and critical infrastructure facilities in Lviv region, you should be informing about them phone 096-322-4524
Ну і раді представити
096-322-45524.
Оксана Дощаківська, керівниця
And we are happy
західноукраїнської
to
філії
present
міжнародного
Oksana
представництва
Dощаківська, the
Міжнародного відродження.
representative
Вітаємо
of the
тебе, Оксано.
Western
У нас вже
branch
було
of
кілька
the International
представників
Renaissance
склали, але
Foundation.
сьогодні ми хочемо
We've
детальніше
had several
поговорити про
representatives of the
внутрішньо переміщених
foundation
осіб,
in
бо
our
кількість
studio
надзвичайно
already, but we would like to talk about IDPs with you because the numbers are increasing day by day. So the headquarters of your foundation was very flexible in responding to the situation, and we have to explain this to our viewers that the foundations are not that flexible. There are some mechanisms for decision making which are good for peaceful time because there are some stages which encourage the participation of various stakeholders. Right now, it's quite complicated for different international donors to readjust their mechanisms and change their mechanisms. So our advantage is that we are a national foundation. We are registered as a national foundation, and that gave us the benefit of being flexible in our approach to the situation, and not just in the approach to the situation, but also to the decision making, changing the priorities, and also in the way we are responding to the situation in the country. So how are you helping the IDPs? So, do you deal only with those that are coming to Lviv, or do you also help those that are arriving in other cities of Ukraine? Thank you, Irina, for this question. The thing is that we've already had some experience as a foundation. We were working with this topic of IDPs, which started back in 2014. In 2014, of course, Lviv and other regions were receiving many IDPs, which were coming here from the already occupied territories. And we had many people from Crimea, Crimean Tatars, and generally Crimea residents. And also we had people coming from the east. Thus, we already have the experience of working within this topic, within this issue. But I have to tell you that the scales we are facing these days, they are not comparable with what we had back in 2014. Right now in Lviv, we have received more than 200,000 people who need protection and who need to have the satisfaction of their basic needs, but we also understand that they will require employment and accommodation, not just staying for the night in some gym. So as of now, we are working in the following way. We are helping the organizations to organize their work in satisfying the basic needs. So we don't have this separate grand direction. We haven't launched any specific competition for working with IDPs, but we are planning this, and we have a very clear understanding that this is a very relevant topic. What is also very interesting is that we are trying to work not just with other foundations. We try to find partners within local self-governance bodies, NGOs. We are very happy that NGOs show initiative themselves, and they are already working with such needs like employment for IDPs. And we, as the National Foundation, we will be working with IDPs regardless of their location. So should there be the need, should there be initiatives, we will be helping with structuring the problems, with finding the approaches, and we will be working with these people across the territory of Ukraine. Alexander Sushko told us that you were able to readjust very quickly. So how many of the organizations in Lviv region are currently working with this topic? Have they joined what you are doing, or are they just working with the topic of war separately? I cannot give you a specific answer to this question. I don't know how many grant programs were open in Lviv region at the beginning of the war. Not all grants join in working with IDPs. Many organizations that were working with the Renaissance Business Foundation's grants, and it was like information campaign. For instance, they just changed the content of their information campaign. There are other cases. We are having representatives of our foundation that used to live in Kyiv and other cities of Ukraine, and they had to flee just like other people had to. So many of them have moved to Lviv, and we see this very interesting phenomenon that these partners who have become IDPs themselves are repurposing their programs for the needs of IDPs. And this is quite an unusual situation for me when we have an analyst of one of the leading organizations, one of the leading world organizations, who is currently looking for humanitarian aid or thinking about ways on how to do the accounting of IDPs, how to do the reporting on the numbers. That is important because we will have to have this clear understanding who has moved, what their needs are, do they have kids, do they go to school, do they go to the kindergarten, and what kinds of businesses do we need for these people to get the employment. So the International Renation Foundation has this pool of NGOs, and there are those NGOs that have responded quite fast to the needs of the war, including the needs of IDPs. Will your foundation be working with those NGOs? Of course. This is our benefit, this is our advantage. We will be working with them as a national foundation. Of course, there are some requirements for professional work where we are requiring experience, but under current circumstances, the efficiency of achieving the goals is very important. The short-term decisions, that is very important. It's important that we act here and now, and I also have to tell you that we are reaching a level when we are getting used to the war. We are not responding ad hoc only. We are planning our work. We are thinking about making it sustainable. We are trying to be relevant not just today, but also tomorrow. That is why the work with IDPs, I find this term to be very unusual, IDPs. That is something that conceals people, but as a matter of fact, these are our acquaintances and friends who have suddenly lost their homes, and it's very important for us to understand what their needs will be tomorrow. Today, their need is to stay somewhere for the night, but tomorrow they will be longing for employment. Nobody wants to sit idling during war. So how will we ensure employment? How will we ensure jobs and self-fulfillment for these people? And at the same time, how do we make it? How do we make our economy sustainable? How do we make our economy work so that it helps our country fight? This is a strategic question for us, which we will be working with. How are you currently working right now? We are trying.
Я думаю, що можливо в нас і будуть такі моделі, які будуть йти в співпраці з органами місцевого самоврядування.
Це тільки Львів, чи ви будете зараз шукаєте і в малих містах, тому що люди теж там живуть?
Ні, ми, напевно, нам буде складно достягнутися до кожного малого міста, і, напевно, будемо все-таки пробувати працювати зі Львовом, з обласними центрами, де і скупчення переселенців теж дуже велике.
Коли говориться про роботу фонду відродження, всі люди думають, що це структура, яка складається, там, наприклад, це західне представництво, західне регіональне, не знаю, там 100 осіб, 200 осіб. Ну, ми то знаємо, що це дуже обмежена кількість осіб, але для того, щоб приймати зараз ці рішення дуже коротко і швидко, ви збільшили штат?
Ні. В нас Міжнародний фонд відродження – це близько 50 осіб, які працюють. Тобто в нас є на всю Україну. Це достатній штат для того, щоб приймати і такі рішення в тому числі.
Це зараз всі проекти підуть на переселенців, на
Ні.
роботу з ними, чи будуть умовно культура, медіа, це теж продовжувати?
Ну, насправді, якщо ми говоримо про внутрішньо переміщених осіб, то тема культури залишається дуже важливою. Тому що ми знаємо, наприклад, мене дуже засмучували, я не кажу, що це неправильно, але оці правила для переселенців, які свого часу з'явилися в інтернеті, може ви бачили. Ми маємо розуміти, що Україна – наш спільний дім, і Львів – це Україна, чи будь-яке інше місто – це теж Україна. І нам дуже важливо забезпечити порозуміння між людьми, які приїхали, і тими, хто є тут в місцевих громадах. Ми знаємо, що для цього, можливо, це не питання теж з сьогоднішнього дня, але дуже важливо будувати належний діалог і належну інтеграцію. І з огляду на це культурні інструменти, медійні кампанії, вони будуть дуже актуальними. Тобто і культурні проекти, і все воно буде. Ні, внутрішньо переміщені особи не будуть єдиною цільовою аудиторією, і це не буде єдиним напрямком нашої роботи. У нас достатньо багато напрямків, ми їх для себе визначили як 5, з якими ми працюємо, і це робота з медійними проектами і з підтримкою сталих наших партнерів спільнот. Це в тому числі робота з гуманітарними потребами, бо, як я вже сказала, багато наших партнерів переорієнтувалися на гуманітарні потреби. Ми бачимо нові ініціативи, які допомагають жити і виживати в окупованих містах, які допомагають забезпечувати базові потреби для внутрішньо переміщених осіб. Ми працювали і будемо працювати із складовою, яка пов'язана з документуванням злочинів. Ви, напевно, теж про це знаєте, і дуже багато зараз є платформ публічної інформації, але для того, щоб агресор був покараний належно і ми мали можливість стягнути репарації, нам потрібно належно фіксувати кожен зі злочинів, які відбуваються сьогодні в країні. І це один теж з важливих ключів, з яким буде працювати фонд і надалі.
Коротке питання. Одеса і Дніпро відносно безпечні? Відносно безпечні. Ось, чи там фонд ще зараз працює, чи ж там все
так само, як і всюди, фонд працює, ми маємо теж там, шукаємо партнерів, слідкуємо за ситуацією. Так само, насправді ситуація в плані інституційної роботи фонду, воєнна і довоєнна, не змінилися. Ми працюємо.
І казав Олександр Сушко, що в Києві також залишаються люди.
Колеги, так.
Харків, Херсон.
В Херсоні нас не було.
Ні, в Харкові не виходить.
Не виходить.
Трошечки складно. Хоча Сергій є, Сергій працює, ми Сергію допомагаємо. Колишній працівник фонду. Є львівська спільнота, ви бачили, ви говорили вже про ці правила. Переселенці, які приїхали, їх теж не можна сприймати за одну спільноту. Є ті, хто зразу включається в роботу, є ті, кому треба допомагати, тому що вони виїхали буквально в тапочках, в теплій піжамі. Ось, а є ті, як казав Володимир, що на Сихові гуляють по парку, відпочивають, випивають, тому що не живуть в нормальних умовах, гроші є. Як оці різні розрізнені спільноти зараз інтегрувати в роботу міста, тому що вже починається оце.
Так, і інтегрувати розрізненими різними інструментами.
Так, ти на Сихівський парк з ними трошечки.
Які треба, дивіться, все залежить. І насправді нічого поганого в тому нема, що люди, які хотіли безпеки, мають можливість гуляти в парку. Ми в ковід побачили, що гуляти в парку – це досить здорово, знаєте. Гуляють в парку, нічого поганого в тому нема. Якщо люди приїхали зі своїми грошима, насправді теж нічого поганого в цьому нема, бо люди тут включають нашу економіку, щоб вона працювала. Але однозначно є різні люди з різними потребами, і це знову і кожна з цих груп, і кожна ця людина буде потребувати своїх інструментів інтеграції. Але нам тут важливо зрозуміти, як ми це зробити. І тут робота не лише з внутрішньопереміщеними особами. Тут важлива робота з командою, яка
the IDPs here, but also with the local communities, the receiving communities. So currently we are having this experience from back of 2014. We remember the cultural projects we were supporting, but the issue is that back then we had the understanding that the conflict was having some limits in time. Now the conflict is ongoing, so it's kind of complicated to talk about cultural projects, and it's complicated to fit in those priorities. But for all of us, solidarity is the key priority. This is the basic need for our survival. It's important that this solidarity does not turn into the queue near Piana Vyshnya when the issue of liquor sales was being solved. I have another question. So, how are we going to be working with the IDPs? The first thing we need to understand is that IDPs are the new potential for the development of the local community. The people coming here have their own experience, and the first thing that we need to do is to find out. Of course, we shouldn't be grilling these people, but just we need to give them an opportunity to take a breath, to come down, and then find out who has joined our community, because every person, every new member of the community is potentially going to contribute to this community. The other thing we need to find out are ways in which we can ensure that their basic needs are ensured. We can speak about Halachina cuisine and the beauty of our songs, but people should be fed and should feel safe. And the third thing is the Halachina cuisine and our songs, so that we don't just impose our local traditions and customs, but we also give these people the opportunity to realize their identity. While talking about ourselves, we need also to give the opportunity for these people to have a voice. So these are the basic 3 recommendations. We hope that people in the local communities have listened to us. Thank you. We had the representative of the Western branch of the International Renaissance Foundation with us, Oksana. Sorry for such circumstances. It's the first time that I've been in this makeshift studio in a bomb shelter, so let me remind you that you have to stay in the bomb shelter, but we are working from the bomb shelter. It's hour 3, it's 2.5 hours since the air raid strike has been announced, but we continue our work for you. In continuation of the topic of IDPs, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine has approved reimbursement for utilities for those people who have accommodated IDPs. This has been reported by the Minister of the Development of Territories. So people who are giving accommodation to IDPs will get 450 hryvnias for the reimbursement of utility payments for each IDP they are receiving. They are accommodating here, so lists will be made for such people. Registries of homeowners which provide shelter for IDPs will be created, and accommodation will happen, of course, only with the consent of the homeowner. And the Cabinet of Ministers has developed also some social benefits packaging for the IDPs. IDPs will receive 2,000 hryvnias, and also some good news for entrepreneurs. Those employing an IDP will get 6,500 people, 6,500 hryvnias, as reported by our Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. So let's listen to him. The heroic people of Ukraine, it's day 26 of the war. The Russian aggressor has failed their plan to occupy the territory, thus they have resorted to genocide. Over the past 2 days, the enemy has dropped a bomb on the art house in Mariupol, have shelled the house for the elderly in the east of Ukraine, in Kyiv. They attacked a shopping mall where people were sheltering. Because of the war, millions of Ukrainians had to flee their homes. Millions lost their homes. This is the reality the civilized world is already seeing. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has announced a large-scale program to help Ukrainians who had to flee flee their homes because of the military actions. And the Cabinet of Ministers is implementing the program these days. It's about money, job, and accommodation. Money. The state will pay a minimum state support in the amount of 2,000 hryvnias via DIA. You will receive the money without any documents, any bureaucracy. So everyone who has moved from the zone of active military action will receive this money. Plus, you will get 3,000 if you have a child. Number 2, jobs. We are starting an employment program for all IDPs. For this purpose, the state will be paying those employers that will hire IDPs. 6,500 hryvnias for each person employed. And I'm again addressing the entrepreneurs. The state is supporting you in your desire to continue your work where it's possible. Complete regulation of business, simplification of the taxation system, affordable loans. The state is taking part of the responsibility of paying salaries to the people who need it, to the IDPs. So we are working, and I urge everyone to start working, to start hiring people, and to give them the jobs. Number 3, accommodation. Last week, the government already made a decision on the mechanism for reimbursement utility payments to people who are receiving IDPs at schools, kindergartens, houses of culture, and municipal institutions. We are expanding the program so that the families that are receiving IDPs at their homes also get reimbursement. So those who responded to the need, to the call, who provided free of charge shelter will receive 450 hryvnias per each IDP they are receiving at their home. All the 3 programs have already been approved by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. Implementation will start today on March the 21st with the registration of IDPs by the Centers of Administrative Services provision, and starting from the 30th day of the month, the registration of IDPs will start. When the war is over, we will rebuild each building, each facility destroyed, but everyone who has found shelter and job during this hard time will forever have the memory and gratitude to the hromadas, to the local communities, and we will not forget that as well. Glory to Ukrainians, glory to Ukraine. We are back in our studio, and I'm again reminding you we have to stay in the bomb shelters. The air raids, sirens were heard across Ukraine. We are broadcasting from this makeshift studio. This is not our traditional studio, so we are asking you to stay in the shelters. You can watch us on your phones, on your tablets, but please stay in a safe place. We have the next guest in our studio, Nazar Tachishin, PhD in philology, and he is working at the Lviv Polytechnic National University. Today we have the International Poetry Day, and Nazar is one of the participants of the event organized to commemorate this day. Welcome, Nazar. Glory to Ukraine. So we understand that you were a poet, and you wouldn't have been here had you not been a poet. So what is this event? We know that there were several initiators, and there were also military men who are poets, and they want to draw attention to poetry about war. And what kind of event is that, and how is UNESCO involved? So the main initiator is Volodymyr Tymchuk. He is a poet, translator, and also an officer of the Ukrainian Armed Forces courses, and he already had many collections of his verses published. So he initiated this event, perhaps the first event of this kind in the world, in order to draw attention to the cultural aspect of our resistance, how we are resisting the Russian aggression through poetry, how we are resisting the atrocities of the Russians. So out of more than 500 texts about war that we have received, we have selected around 50, if I'm not mistaken. At today at 8 p.m. Kyiv time, we will have this online marathon in Ukrainian and in English on our YouTube channel, and you can find the links on Volodymyr Tymchuk's page and also on the page of the Institute for the Relations with the Diaspora. So this is how you can join and support Ukraine by means of poetry. I know that there was this address to UNESCO, and Volodymyr Tymchuk was the one appealing to UNESCO. So what was he asking for? Since UNESCO was the institution that started the Poetry Day back in 1969, so this appeal was made to the Director General of the organization. The requirements had to do with the most urgent needs of Ukraine at the time: military support, support for Ukraine in the media environment, support for Ukrainian writers. But what is specific about this project, the International Poetry Day for Ukraine 2022, is that the texts have to do with the military topic, and not just the soldiers are authors of the poetry, but we also have volunteers and refugees who wrote verses about current events. We cannot say that this is a very profound reflection on this situation. This is rather a manifestation, impressions, but it's very important, it's very urgent. The organizers did not pay significant attention to the literary quality and beauty. It was important to convey these voices to the world. So at 8 p.m. Are we going to be having authors from different countries? No. These will be Ukrainian authors in translation. So the appeal by Volodymyr Tymchuk was made in 5 languages, the most widespread languages in Europe plus Ukrainian. So we will have professional translators who acted as volunteers and translated those texts in Ukrainian into various languages to popularize Ukrainian word at this time, so that your colleagues abroad can watch this and broadcast to foreign audiences and help raise some money to buy ammunition. Yes, of course. Primarily, we are appealing to world writers because this is the target audience. We want for them to support Ukraine. Are you planning to have any separate events other than this one to support our defenders, to support our soldiers? Of course. Every participant of this event is in this or that way supporting the defenders, either as a member of the territorial defense or as a volunteer, or simply transferring money to support the army, not to mention those who are on the front line. We cannot but use this opportunity because the International Institute of Culture and Connections with Diaspora is working closely with people abroad. So we would like to discuss this situation with you, something that happened in Germany over the weekend. There was this large-scale concert organized in support of Ukraine The name was something something for peace. I don't remember the exact name. But as part of this concert, a very interesting event took place. So if we have the video, I'd like for us to watch it right now, and then we'll have a discussion.
Wir werden jetzt die Schweigeminute einläuten. Hier. Alexis und Barbara. Ganz fest. Lass uns auf 3 runterzählen und beim Klang der Peace Bell gehen wir in die Schweigeminute für den Frieden. Okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Що відбулося?
So what has happened? The presenter, together with the co-presenter, invited a boy wrapped in the Russian flag onto the stage. Then they invited a girl wrapped in the Ukrainian stage onto the stage. And the presenters urged them to ring the bell together. The bell symbolized the peace bell. And in that way, they were explaining to the audience that there should be peace between Ukraine and Russia. And they were exploiting the most vulnerable group, the children. So we were following the reactions of not just the Berlin media, but also the German media in general. So the German outlets did not focus their attention on the peace bell, but Deutsche Welle, one of the most reputable sources in Germany, added that Russians and Ukrainians had to find agreement that there should be peace between the two nations. So you're following the diasporas, Ukrainian diasporas abroad and the one in Germany. So what are they telling you? What are the moods of the Germans regarding this quasi-peace that is impossible? So I would like to comment on what was just shown. This was a huge manipulation and a cynical manipulation at that. So we have very many special information operations happening right now. We know that they are happening upon orders of specific organizations in Russia. So we have seen this performance on Russian TV with the allegedly opposition editor of Sannikova Marina, who allegedly went on live air with this anti-war banner, but we understand that they have no live broadcast in Russia, and it's impossible to enter the studio, even enter this bomb shelter without prior consent. We have to stop here because the air raid siren has been cancelled, so we are going to have a short break.
Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни, відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту. Увага! Громадяни! Відбій повітряної тривоги. Усім вернутись до місць роботи або проживання. Допоможіть у цьому хворим та людям похилого віку. Будьте готові до можливого повторного нападу противника. Завжди майте із собою засоби індивідуального захисту.
Повертаємося до звичніших для нас
So we return to the more general conditions in our studio. Now, air raid alert is over. Please stay to your homes, usual for you. Why have this air raid been for so long, for 2.5 hours? So we don't have information yet, so it might have been fairly stable. So right before we were in our other studios, we started our discussion on the World Day of Poetry, and at 2000 this evening we'll host several poets who join together, where they're going to voice their texts on military topics. So we have a guest here with us today, so we continue our discussion with him. So before we discussed with him a situation where in Germany, during a concert where Ukrainian and Russian winger were used in various purposes. So the first news behind the scenes were about the devils or stupid people. So please convey information about not being where our green forces are, but about occupants. So yesterday there was a video from TikTok. So one user of TikTok published a material where Ukrainian forces have been there. So in several hours, huge bombarding have been delivered to the centers, the shopping mall. So who it was who published and others. So we urge people to check carefully all the information. Do not publish any information about Ukrainian forces because it can only harm. Because shopping malls have been burned down and where civilian people were not Ukrainian arms. So officially the information was the following, that Britain's Ministry of Defense said that they will deliver their air defense system to the Ukrainian armed forces, along with Stingers. There, man-pates were 60 centimeters Wolfram. A solution is they also have bigger speed, maximum they last for up to 8 kilometers. So the laser system is quite reliable because neither term or other traps can be a problem for that. 6 kilometers per second is the average time for the Stingers, so the occupiers will have less time to hide. They also have 3 projectiles equipment which can be equipped to vehicles. So once you have a firework, it can be a special traps to actually distract occupants. So more defense system will be destroyed by our forces. So let's continue our discussion about the incident occurred in Germany. So our Ukrainian singers participated in this concert. So let's recall once again this video about boy and girl, allegedly from Ukraine and Russian, and how they were used in the certain purposes.
Die Schweigeminute einläuten. Hier. Alexis und Barbara. Ganz fest. Lass uns auf 3 runterzählen und beim Klang der Peace Bell gehen wir in die Schweigeminute für den Frieden. Okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3.
So, Nazar Demchishin, representative of the international representative of diaspora links and the Lviv University. So we have started our discussion. So these 2 children with flags, and nobody was asked for their consent to be present during this accident. It's obvious that government of Germany and people of Germany, these are different things, but I know that you are in close links with the diaspora. So what's their reaction to those incidents? Of course, the local government knew about this, and what's their reaction? Do they communicate with the civilians in Germany? So do they really want Ukrainians and Russians to be friends again? So they are firmly convinced that there should be no war, but they are convinced in different manners. General Germans are simply thinking that we can agree upon something with Russians, and you can see these convincing thoughts on this footage. And people are all for peace coming to those rallies. So Ministry of Defense of Germany should spend less money for defense, according to them. But as these rallies have many people, so I think that our diaspora is convinced in different things, as being the biggest Ukrainian representatives present in Germany. So they gather donations to help Ukrainian IDPs, refugees. So it is a very movable movement, very coordinated job, which is now take place in communities. Sometimes in various countries, there is a case when more money are gathered rather than to be distributed to Ukraine. So to analyze this picture, as I already said, it's a special information operation consisted of other enemies operation, which takes place in whole European media. So we have seen already how this pseudo manifest of TV first channel in Russian was being held, and no other punishment were delivered to her after these events. Otherwise, there was a certain wave of enlightenment from the Western media, claiming that Russians are all they good. They have this courage to protest against Putin. So it's kind of various protests. Enemy has shown its true face, while enemy was bombarding Ukrainian city Mariupol and others. So by doing these manifestations, enemy tries to return its good face, and I'm sure that these incidents are being well paid. We can recall a place in Italy, Immoral, where two persons or two figures are being hugged between each other, where one is for Russian, the second is for Ukrainian. So they try to have this peace between two countries. So there will be no dialogue before Ukrainians keep suffering bombarding, according to other representatives. So there is no clear understanding of this dehumanized attitude by Russia. So the ambassador to Germany in Ukraine has shown its own positions, and Olaf Scholz stated in Twitter, stating that there should be dialogue between two countries, and our ambassador showed harsh reactions, and we also can track various opinion from him during all these years in terms of Russian narratives. So you also communicate with other diasporas, and where Ms. Melnik is there. So I don't want to be mistaken, but what are they keep saying? Since the full-fledged war started by the Moscovites, we don't have any particular contacts. So we do know that they are more targeted. I think that all these people were forced to stay in the enemy's area. So they were staying there, and naturally they are in particular area of threat. According to Ms. Melnik, She organizes and she manages one of the most powerful women's communities, and we have held joint events with her in terms of spreading Ukrainian language, and just to let people not forget their authentic links. And we tried to bring together all Ukrainian authentities, but now they are of particular threat in the Russian Federation. So we have discussed in this studio that German culture and Russia, great culture, is something that German admire. How can we counteract to this admiring? What can we do to prevent other actions, something like boy and girl happened during the concert? We can recall the second part of the 20th century when Nichi Levitsky said that the Russian poetry is, and the Russian culture is something but thoroughly harmful for Ukrainians. And now it all can be applicable to the Russians, because they are now counteract themselves to the normal common values, because Russian culture and Russian government are closely connected, and all this Russia's ideology is being fulfilled with the Russian culture, with the expansion to Ukrainian people and Ukrainian land, and as they have decided to have Ukrainian land on their own. So, as they claim to say that these are authentic, not Ukrainian lands, according to them, we need to recall our classics, because Russian thoughts and culture create these crimes, because these are not the first crimes during Ukrainian history. Let's remember the burning out Kyiv. So it used to be, it was so difficult to imagine that a man coming from Kyiv could damage Kyiv, but this man did so, claiming that Moscow is something but different, and Kyiv is no longer something of sacrifice, so they can destroy it. So, and we are talking about the 12th, 13th century, and in terms of this ideology, so they continue to be in place. And the only thing that big countries need is just to have to wage the new war. So that's how we have this Chechnya war, Georgian, Moldova's war, and Ukraine is something bigger in terms of their ideology. And they are trying to find there and here more things. So we have discussed various other things behind our broadcasting. And just to conclude, so no friendship can be between Russian and Ukrainians. 80% of Russian actually consent or approve the Putin's war against Ukraine, and Ukrainian children can have nothing and no friendship with the Russian, because the Russian children actually are fed with propaganda from their birth. But in 2014, Ukrainians stopped suffering tyranny, but Russians continue to have their dictators, so they support all his activities. So no friendship between peaceful country and the country of enemy, which kills children. So there might be no friendship. So thank you, our guest, the representative of Diaspora Links of Lviv Polytechnic Institute. We wish you all good luck in your production and propaganda various thoughts to diaspora. So we conclude in this topic. We don't know whether Mr. Zelensky watched this episode during this conference, so we have also his address to the German people. So let's have a look. Friends, so don't be afraid now. You're going to hear we've been through the next 25 days. So bombarding sounds or alert signals are so common for our cities. So that lasted for 20 seconds, and we are keep hearing that for the days, weeks. Our people hear that for days. They immediately take their children, help elderly, they go to shelters, to basement, to rescue themselves, to survive from the Russian bombardier. So this siren's sound is accompanying Ukrainians when they are sleeping, when they are giving birth, when they are dying. Thousands of our people have been died due to this horrible war, the war against Ukraine, our land. So let's recall everyone who have fallen, perished for our Ukraine.
Дякую. До цієї війни нашу
Thank
столицю Київ називали новим Берліном, порівнюючи нашу і вашу відкритість, емоції, свободу на площах, щирість людей, клуби, вечірки. А тепер Київ закритий.
So right now, Kyiv is
В
closed.
очікуванні нової повітряної тривоги,
We are awaiting a
нової
new
сирени,
siren.
яка змусить людей піти в укриття.
New siren that will make people go to the bomb shelters. We cannot get together like you have done. We cannot live like you are living. We are at war. We are at war for our salvation against one of the most numerous armies in the world. We are fighting against bombs, missiles, helicopters, and planes, which have their signs to Berlin because they want to go further, much further than Ukraine. They want to reach your territories. We are fighting against occupiers who are killing regular civilians, who are creating famine for entire towns and cities, who are creating fires in entire quarters. We have 115 children already killed. It's the worst war in Europe since World War II, and I'm sure that you all see this. But what has brought you to this event, to the street, the name of which resembles about the uprising of June the 14th against dictatorship? The same reason brought you here, which makes us defend ourselves. The desire to live in peace, to live as equals. And what makes Russia go to war against us? The desire to destroy everything, destroy our values and your values, because we are you. We, Ukrainians, are part of Europe. Do you see our desire to be together with Europe? Our desire, which we are fighting for in the battlefield, which you can fight for just within your communities, by expressing your opinions, by putting pressure on your politicians, so that Ukraine finally becomes a part of the European Union. The people of Germany, you have the power. Europe has the power, which is stronger than any missiles, than any tanks. Without the trade with you, without the trade with your companies, Russian banks will have no money for this war. So let there be peace as soon as possible. And you can help us with it. You have to defend yourselves. Nobody has the right to destroy entire nations and to fight against Europe. We warned your politicians that it was dangerous for Russia to decide whether Europe has gas and what the price for that gas is. We warned you about sanctions, and when Russian missiles hit 20 kilometers away from the border with Poland, when they attacked our nuclear power plant, everybody at last understood that they had to support us, that they had to help us, because your life depends on that as well. Do not sponsor the war machine of this country, of Russia. Don't give a single euro to the occupier. Close all your ports for them. Don't send products to Russia. Refuse Russian energy resources. Put pressure so that Russia leaves Ukraine. And I believe and I know that peace is possible, but you have to do something for us to be able to achieve that peace. Each of you in Germany, each of you in Europe, so that Kyiv can be called the new Berlin, so that our streets and our squares are as safe as your streets and squares are, so that we hear the happy laughter, we see the smiles, the children playing, not in the bomb shelters, for all of us to forget about the airstrike sirens, as you have already forgotten about them. No chance to the Russian missiles, no chance to the Russian bombs, no chance to the war. Please act. Act so that peace comes to Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.
Героям слава, повертаємось в студію.
Glory to its heroes. We are back in the studio of Перший Західний TV channel. We're going to have a minute of hate and a minute of love. So we will talk about those who support the war in Ukraine, those who are stealing from us and hiding behind some patriotic motivations. I'm going to show you a resource which has put together celebrities and politicians who support the Russian aggression. So here we have Russian actors, politicians, people of culture, Instagram bloggers. So if you're following them on any of the social medias, please unsubscribe, because in the opposite case you will be supporting their information war. What you can do, you can tell their subscribers the truth about what is happening in Ukraine. In addition to those people who are supporting the war, there are also people who are stealing. So the wife of the former companion of our Minister of Internal Affairs was trying to cross the border with $30 million
Це була
and
Анастасія
1.3
Котвіцька
million
та її мати
euros. It
Галина
was Anastasia
Але це ще не
Kotvitska and
все.
her mother
Ми
Halina
дуже багато
Kucher.
говоримо спорт, зараз всі єдині.
That's not
30
it.
мільйонів доларів?
$30 million, $28.8 million, $1.3 million euros. So we were also mentioning the athletes, the Dynamo Kyiv football players. Some of them joined the territorial defense forces, while the owners of the football team crossed the border with Hungary on the 23rd of February. And at Vylok, border crossing point, they declared $17 million, and the Hungarian bodyguards had to ask them to do that. And I'm just asking, if you have some eye drops, please take them and bring them to the Hungarian border so that the customs officers have their eyes opened and not let the people like that cross the border. Now let's switch to the minute of love. So Volodymyr Zelensky thanked Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher
війни Росії проти України
for
в'язалися в цей процес, але в
their
хорошому слові в'язалися, бо
engagement
вони
in
вже
the
зібрали
support to
35 мільйонів
Ukraine
доларів
since
для
the
українців.
new
І що
stage
цікаво,
in
вони
the
ці
Russian-Ukrainian
кошти
war. They
передадуть
have managed to
для
collect
платформ,
almost
на яких
$35
можна
million.
орендувати житло
They will
для
donate the
біженців,
money
які
to
виїхали
the
з України і шукають таке
platforms
житло в
where
інших
people
країнах.
are looking for
Один з таких
accommodation.
сервісів
One of
найпопулярніший
such
Airbnb,
services, the most
де
popular
можуть
ones, is the
шукати житло
Airbnb,
українці, і от
where
35
Ukrainians
мільйонів піде,
can
власне,
look
туди.
for
Ну, і на
accommodation. So
вихідних дуже активно всі
35 million will
обговорювали
be donated to
Instagram,
those services.
Бекхема, футболіста,
And
який
also we have
віддав
discussed
свій
this
профіль в
already.
Інстаграмі. Ну,
David
це так гучно
Beckham,
звучить, віддав.
the
Він в
football
сторіс,
player,
запостив історію,
posted a
від
story
імені,
on
харківської
Instagram
лікарки,
on
яка
behalf
показала,
of a Kharkiv
лікарню,
doctor
як вона
who
виглядає,
showed the
дитячу лікарню в Харкові.
hospital, the children's
Ну,
hospital
там
in
відео
Kharkiv,
не
where
скажу,
she
не
is
дуже довге,
working.
але
It's not a very
все
long
ж таки у
video,
Бекхема 70 мільйонів
but
підписників, і
again,
вони змогли
Beckham has
побачити, що
70 million
відбувається зараз у харківській
subscribers,
лікарні.
70
Я
million
особисто
followers
це
who were
відео
able to
сприйняла
see
критично, бо можна
what
було
was
знайти якусь
happening
іншу
at
лікарню
Kharkiv
з
hospital. I was
Можна
critical
було б
about
Маріуполь
that
показати дуже
video
багато
because
критичніші кадри, тому
there
що
are
ті
more
кадри, які на
critical
сторінці Бекхема
sites
з'явилися,
and
вони,
facilities
скажімо
like
так,
those in Mariupol, because the
з
story that
найгіршої
was
лікарні,
shown
яка б могла
on
бути, але це точно не виглядало
Beckham's
як лікарня в умовах війни.
Instagram
Однак,
was
ми
not
так
really
розуміємо,
a
що це була
hospital
одна із
under
вимог
war, but we
ЮНІСЕФу,
understand
міжнародної
that was one of the
організації.
requirements of
Напевно,
the
Бекхем з нею
UNICEF,
співпрацює, і
and
ця
probably
організація з ним
Beckham
домовилася
cooperates
про
with
передання
them, and that was
його
the
профіля для
agreement
цієї
with
лікарки.
UNICEF for
Не
Beckham
можемо
to
критикувати, ну,
give
нам
his
відео не
Instagram over
сподобалося,
to
але,
that
можливо,
woman.
міжнародним
We cannot be
нашим
critical. We did
партнерам
not
і тим
like the
людям,
video,
які
but maybe the
стежать за
international
Бекхемом, воно,
partners
як
and
кажуть, символізм
Beckham's
зайшло.
followers
Головна мета
liked
це зібрати
it,
все-таки
but
кошти
main
на такі
objective
лікарні
was
і на підтримку
to
українців,
help
тому,
raise some
ну,
money
будь-яка така
for
співпраця, будь-яка
the needs
підтримка
of
від
the
таких
hospital and
селебритіс, які
Ukrainians.
мають,
So
ну,
any
тим паче по
support from
70
such
мільйонів
organizations
підписників в
and
Інстаграмі, вони
celebrities who
лише
have 70
вітаються
million
і,
followers
можемо їх
on
розцінювати лише з
Instagram are
позитивної
very much
точки зору.
welcome, and we can see them as
щоб не
something
втрачати
very
на
positive.
четвертий, п'ятий,
And also
шостий
we
тиждень
discussed that with
інформаційної
Dima
підтримки
Maldiev.
за кордоном. По факту
We
ми їх ще
shouldn't
не
be
втрачаємо.
losing the
Є
information
зміщення
support on the
акцентів, умовно,
4th,
давайте
5th
говорити про
week of
дружбу,
the war.
показують
We are
лікарню,
not
яка,
losing
ну,
the
не найгірша
support,
з
but
тих, що,
there is
умовно,
a
є
shift
в умовах
in
війни, але все-таки
focuses.
інформаційно
There are those
лише
urges
на радарах всіх
for
людей.
friendship between Ukraine and Russia. This video, which doesn't show the worst hospital. So again, coming back to that event in Berlin with the small children wrapped in Russian and Ukrainian flags, that's not a good example to follow. But if something like that were to be posted on Beckham's Instagram once or twice a week, then we had Arnold Schwarzenegger who posted his video. And if we were able to include some pieces of video And then, if they all condemn Putin as the terrorist, and if we were able to maintain the interest of those celebrities, if we manage to keep Ukraine on the front pages, the entire world will focus their attention on what is happening in Ukraine. And again, Schwarzenegger's appeal became very popular on Russian platforms. Many Russian social media influencers share this video, and it should be noted that Schwarzenegger donated 80 million via one of his friends for the support of our armed forces, and I know for sure that rifles, bulletproof vests and helmets have already been purchased with this money. So Alexei bought everything on his way to Ukraine. And about another whistling, so we have this former Ukrainian chess player Serhiy Karyakin, who became the Grossmeister at the early age of 12. Before 2014, he accepted the Russian citizenship. He supported Putin in whatever way possible, and right now he is saying that what Putin is doing is great. He's supporting it. And a piece of news which is quite strange for me, something I would not have expected from the International Chess Federation. They disqualified him for 6 months. So the International Chess Federation is like a branch of the Russian Chess Federation. It's similar to the Box Federation. So the Russians invest a lot of money into that federation, and they decide on the policies of this federation. So last week we told you how the losses of Russians should be calculated from what happened at the border, and from and if we compare that to the official announcements that they are making, so we have this resource which allows you to do the math. So what you see here: deceased 15,000 as of today, wounded 45,000, and up to 1,000 captivated. So 32.1% from those who have invaded the territory. So we need to speak here not about the armed forces, because we have the members of Rosgvardia and the Kadyrov squads that also were killed by the Ukrainian armed forces. So, as we are listening to our soldiers, 30% of the military vehicles and machines on average are not working. Thus, what has already been destroyed by us, it's quite a significant amount, but we need to destroy between 50 and 70%. And we have quite relevant information about those locations that we are following. So we have Alexander Staruch from Zaporizhia Military Administration, who reports that the Russians have shelled the vacation buses, wounding 4 children. And we have this very sad statistics from the Prosecutor General, according to which 115 children have already died in Ukraine and 148 children were wounded. We also have information from Berislav, the town of Berislav, Kherson region, and they are reporting that the mayor of Berislav, Alexander Shapovalov, was taken by the Russians back on Saturday. He is in captivity. That is reported by the website of Kherson Regional State Administration. It's not the first time that the Russian Russian invaders are just taking our mayors into captivity, making them collaborate. But as the mayor of Melitopol has shown, they are failing. And the locals do not agree to talk and collaborate, and then our special services manage to get them exchanged as part of some special operations. But the Russians don't stop, and this is their way to blackmail both the central government and the locals. But again, today there was another rally in Kherson. People took to the streets protesting against the Russian military man, and I had this impression that Kherson is not just a heroic city. Mariupol is not just a heroic city when people are not afraid to take to the streets barehanded without weapons. They go to the rally, making the Russian occupiers leave. And today the Russian occupiers threw grenades at people and they shot people. There were several people wounded. So people took to the streets, defending their land, defending their homes. And those soldiers attacked unarmed people. So it's quite clear why they are doing that, because they are trying to organize some secret elections in Kherson, and these people who take to the street are just going against their plans, because there are people who are clearly against Russian occupiers. This destroys their propaganda. People are not welcoming them with flowers. People are swearing at them. So in Melitopol we have some good news. 3 journalists and 1 publishing house employee were released from captivity. But again, coming back to the topic of capturing local self-governance representatives, we have a comment from Chernihiv. So several heads of villages were taken by the Russians. There were several deputies and even a school principal that were taken by the Russians, and the occupiers make them collaborate. Just listen, read Ukrainian laws. The heads of Ukrainian villages don't have the authority to make such decisions. So I will not be reporting on the information from the General Staff of the Armed Forces. We have a video about the situation on the front lines and the situation with the fight against the Russian invaders. It's day 26 of the heroic resistance of Ukrainians against the Russian invasion. The occupying forces feel the need to restore and maintain their military vehicles and equipment. According to the available information, since there are no imports of spare parts, Chelyabinsk tractor factory and another factory have stopped producing armored vehicles for the needs of the Russian armed forces. We also see cases of defection among the military personnel of the occupiers. Nihevronshchina, Makariv district, Kyiv region, a group of Russians took over a car from the locals, switched into regular clothes and moved towards the Belarus border. On the temporarily occupied areas of Zaporizhia region, invaders are preparing elections in order to organize the so-called Russian humanitarian convoys in the port of Berdyansk. The occupiers have the KAMAZ lorries. Similar trucks were used to transport export ammunition to the temporarily occupied territories of Luhansk and Donetsk. This may attest to the intention of the occupiers to organize similar convoys to Zaporizhia region. The occupiers have developed a maintenance point. Up to 20 armored vehicles are being restored. In Novakhovka, the occupiers are checking documents at the block post in order to detain locals that participated in the anti-terror operation. We are also seeing large numbers of deaths among the severely wounded Russian occupiers. We will win together. Glory to Ukraine. And while the General Staff is reporting on the losses of the enemy and the situation in different directions, Volodymyr Zelensky does not cease to repeat that nobody in Ukraine will surrender. Today, he gave an interview to the European public broadcasters, and he said that for Russia to be successful with its ultimatums, they will have to destroy us all. I will be citing. So they put an ultimatum on the table. That's what the Russians are saying. It's not the issue of us. The issue is that the people and the government are all united. Ukraine will not be able to meet this ultimatum. We will not be able to do it physically. That's what Volodymyr Zelensky is saying. Neither people in Kharkiv, neither people in Mariupol or Kyiv will be able to do that, and we can see that in the occupied cities like Melitopol and Berdyansk. When the Russians entered those cities, people were not eager to surrender, and even by capturing people, they still don't achieve their goal. They take down our flags, they put up their own flag. What do they want? Do you want to destroy us all? So I'm giving you the answer. We will meet your ultimatum only when we are no longer here. So Zelensky continues this narrative. He's finding the messages that are targeted to specific nations. So if we speak about Germans, he focused on business. He said that they were making money on blood. Over the weekend, he addressed the Israeli Knesset, and he iterated that during World War II, Ukrainians showed that many of them helped save lives of the Jewish people when the German Nazis were killing Jews. Ukrainian families were giving them shelters, putting their life on the line. And now when addressing the Knesset, Zelensky reminded the Jewish people about that again when addressing the British people, the Americans. He had very targeted messages. He mentioned Pearl Harbor and the Twin Towers when addressing the Americans. So we should say that there is this team who is doing a very great job when writing these speeches. It's sad that it's one Ukrainian diplomat who helps with these speeches. There are actually two people who are writing them, and there's a team who supports them, and they can write a book because these speeches will be studied. To be honest, I don't believe that there are only two people who write speeches. I know a little bit about speech writing, and I know that there are historians who are well aware of different historical events. These targeted messages that will meet the necessary grants. So were you a speechwriter?
посадовим промови.
I used to write speeches, and I wrote speeches for my government officials 2-3 years ago. And now I regret that a little bit. But coming back to the situation on the front lines, one of the key messages that we received from the general staff is that in Zaporizhia region, the occupiers are trying to restore their military vehicles. They are having these field repairing stations, so they are trying to get as many vehicles here as possible. The quality of the pictures we are having is not the best because they were taken with phones, and here you can see the convoys with Russian military equipment and vehicles. And if you know a thing or two about military vehicles, you will see that these are very old vehicles. Russians are trying to use all the reserves that they are having, and right now Russians are even bringing firewood onto the territory of Ukraine because they have issues with supplies. They cannot find anything here, and when they get lost in the forest, why do they need the firewood? To make some food, to keep themselves warm. Also, important message from the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine: since the beginning of the Russian aggression, almost 400,000 Ukrainians came back to the country. Between 75 and 80% of them are men. So this is the number of 300 to 320 men who came back to defend their country. And you reminded me about the video registers, and I have another piece of news to share. Drivers in Ukraine have been banned from using dash cameras. The ban applies to roads of general use facilities, block posts, fortifications, the moves of units of the armed forces, and this ban is effective on the whole territory of Ukraine, in particular those where military actions are happening. As far as filming block posts is concerned, I think it was not allowed even prior to this ban. I would not recommend anybody do that. And we should remember about Shufrich and Boyko, and also Klitschko. To be objective, we have to say that Klitschko was also filming a story against the backdrop of a blog post. And in continuation of this topic, we will not be accusing people who are filming blog posts and the localities. But if you see people who appear to be suspicious, the security service of Ukraine is again appealing to Ukrainians, especially those staying on the territory of Lviv region. So in order to counteract any activities of saboteurs on the territory of the region, the Department of the Security Service asks you to report on any suspicious action, on any threat to military infrastructure, and any relevant threats to our security. So you can either send a message through Telegram, WhatsApp, or Viber. You can report such things via phones or the hotline. The phone number is 096-322-4524. You can simply go to the Facebook page of the Security Service of Ukraine in Lviv region, and you will see that phone number there. So if you see anyone suspicious, feel free to call or send a message. It's better to be cautious. So the local tech journalist is reporting. So he's doing a good job with translation. So he translated an article from the Wall Street Journal that the US is transferring the air defense systems to Ukraine. So these are the B complexes that are familiar to Ukraine, and some decades ago the Americans bought these Soviet systems, and the samples of the actual machines are stored in Alabama, and it's not reported what else will be included in the shipment, and the Pentagon refuses to comment on the transfer of the Soviet air defense systems to Ukraine. And I will additionally explain why not all countries are transferring their air defense systems to Ukraine. It's important that the country that is selling military equipment to another country is giving the certificate of the owner or the certificate of manufacturer. So suppose Turkey has some Soviet equipment that was bought from the USSR. Thus, Turkey cannot transfer this equipment to Ukraine without Russia's consent. That is why we can receive solely the equipment that was not bought from Russia or the USSR, because the Soviet Union does not exist. That is why, again, not all countries can give the air defense systems to us. So we can count on Poland, we can count on Slovakia. Only those countries can give us the air defense system. Those that bought them from Russia cannot give them to Ukraine without the consent of Russia. So our Minister Fedorov has 3 pieces of news. So Fedorov reports that the global services are down, including those of Apple. The situation is stabilizing. Another piece of news is positive. We have not tested this with Stanislav. Fedorov is saying that those who wanted to use Dia to control Bayraktar, so we have launched some digital nerve calming application. So this is something that will calm down your nerves. Update Dia and you will be able to control the Bayraktar. Several other messages from Mikhail Fedorov on the new features of Dia, and we have a video from him while we are waiting for the new guest in our studio to discuss sports infrastructure and how athletes are to participate in competitions during war, and whether the sports sections in Lviv region have restored their work.
Привіт! В Україні триває вже 4-й тиждень війни. У цей час команда Мінцифри, як і мільйони українців, працюють 24/7, щоб наблизити День спільної перемоги. Ми запускаємо нові сервіси в Дії, важливі для кожного з вас у воєнний час. Збираємо кошти на допомогу армії, забезпечуємо Україну старлінками та працюємо над повною цифровою блокадою РФ. Розповім, що нам вдалося зробити за минулий тиждень. Запустили Дія Радіо. Тепер у застосунку